Q2 was tough. It was really tough. Q3 looks so much better. Are you now comfortable with where you've got the company? Have you weathered the worst of the storm?
Good morning, Guy. We're indeed quite satisfied with the third quarter. We have indeed delivered what we wanted to achieve, which is no longer burning cash in the quarter. And that's what we've achieved. And we think we are in the corridor of expectations we had set to ourselves. So I can't say if the worst is behind us, but what I can say is that the plan we've put in place, what we call the adaptation plan, is delivering the results we were expecting so far.
Let's talk about your biggest program, which is the A320, the narrow body that really drives the bulk of the world's airlines. At the moment, you've got production at 40, and you're going to continue that until the summer of next year. Then you are going to ramp up, and you're going to ramp up to circa 47. Guillaume, what gives you the confidence to do that? Because your friends in Chicago yesterday sounded really quite downbeat, and they were talking about a new reality. Why do you have the confidence to ramp up that 320 line?
We have a very strong product with the A320 family and the very strong demand from the market for that product before the pandemic, and as we can see also beyond the pandemic. The backlog has remained very solid. As you have seen, we've not been facing cancellations, and that's a very positive sign from the market. We are now at 40 aircraft a month in terms of productions. Our objective was to converge the deliveries and the production, which is what we have achieved in the third quarter, and we'll continue to stay at the rate 40 per month for the foreseeable future. We have in our supply plan a ramp-up from 40 to 47, beginning of the third quarter of 2021. It was earlier at the beginning of the second quarter of 2021, so we have pushed that point in time by 1 quarter away, and we'll continue to monitor, but based on the backlog we have today and based on the contracts we have with our customers, this would require a ramp up in the second half of 2021. We'll keep monitoring. We are in a very dynamic market given the evolution of the pandemic, and we remain very focused. But on the short term, again, we think the rate 40 is the right one.
Yeah, I want to come back to that kind of dynamic approach that you're taking in just a moment. But which regions are giving you the confidence to be able to do this? Is it all China?
No, it's not all China. You make a good point. China is indeed recovering very well and is very strong at the moment. They are back to 100% of what it was in 2019 for the domestic flights. That's very positive. Now, the result is a combination of what we see globally all around the world. And when we look at one region or the other one, it's changing, it's fast changing, sometimes with good news, sometimes with bad news. So we have to remain prudent locally. But what counts for us is the overall market. And the overall market tells us that the rate 40 seems to be, again, the right position for the production of the Airbus A320 family.
You mentioned just a moment ago the dynamic approach that you're taking to matching production and deliveries. Now, that is critical to the kind of cash flow story that you've been discussing here this morning. How challenging is that to make that happen? It
was very challenging at the outset of the crisis. At the very beginning, we were producing by far more planes than we could deliver, and we have therefore inventories that have piled up. We were at 145 planes finished but not delivered by the end of H1. Now, by the end of the third quarter, we are down to 135, and that's an important indicator of the situation. Because what we deliver is now slightly more than what we produce. That's why we have reasonable confidence for Q4. That's why, by the way, we issued a guidance for free cash flow before M&A and customer financing in the fourth quarter.
In terms of the limitations to production, are you anticipating any issues as a result of the new lockdowns that are being imposed? We saw the French president speaking last night. The idea is that factories and workplaces remain open. But as we work our way through the winter, do you see that further restrictions could impact production?
We have learned to adapt to this new environment in the first phase of the pandemic. That was by far more brutal, and we had no time to adapt at the beginning, so we had to learn. We have invented new ways of working to be able to produce in a safe way with protecting the health of employees. Now we have this in place, and by the way, we have maintained the vast majority of those measures even when the pandemic went down. So we think we're prepared. The governments have as well shown that they pay a lot of attention to make sure that industries can keep working, and therefore my most likely scenario is that there will be up and downs of the measures, but we'll continue to operate in this more challenging environment, but again, an environment to which we have adapted.
Let's come back to your friends in Chicago. Yesterday, announcing fresh job cuts. Is there a danger at this point, given your outlook, of cutting too much? You warned back in July when the 15,000 job cuts were announced at Airbus that that wasn't the worst-case scenario. Do you think that that worst-case scenario has now been taken off the table? Do you think you can rule out at this point further job cuts? And is there a risk if you did that, that actually you wouldn't be able to come back when you need to?
I think we have to remain prudent and humble, and nobody can discard any scenario given the complexity of the pandemic. This being said, we think we have taken the right measures, including when it comes to the job adaptation. We are implementing those measures now, and we have found a lot of good ways of dealing with the situation with our social partners and with the governments. And in particular, on the 15,000 jobs, we are very happy that we can protect part of them with the long-term partial unemployment schemes that have been put in place in Europe by some governments, where we can retain some key skills, but they are funded by government, so we don't have to pay for it in the pandemic. But those people will still be with us when we will be ramping up again. We will have the skill. It was very difficult in the ramp-up to find those people, to find those skills, to onboard people, to train them, and it's important to retain some of them. Now, again, we will see in 2021 how things will play out. We think we are appropriately geared for the moment, and now it's all about execution.
I've heard you say time and time again that tariffs are a lose-lose. How important is the election in the United States going to be to Airbus? Would a Biden win make you more optimistic that the tariffs disputes between the United States and Europe could be resolved more amicably and more quickly?
What makes me very optimistic that there will be a resolution moving forward is the ruling of the WTO that proves what we were saying now for more than a decade, that there were illegal subsidies on the Boeing side. This is clear now. The EU has obtained the right to put tariffs on up to $4 billion of US dollar of goods going from the US to the EU, and this is a way to rebalance the situation and to come to a de-escalation, whatever the administration. So we think that's the major event that will drive the evolution of that dispute.
Guillaume, as you well know, sustainability is now a touchstone for investors. I understand that Boeing is now shopping a new conventional aircraft. You've come out with plans for 3 hydrogen-powered aircraft. Do you think, how confident are you that the next airframe that Airbus produces will not be a current generation aircraft, and it will be an aircraft that is powered by an alternative source of energy?
Very good question, thank you. At Airbus, we think we have the privilege to have 4 modern platforms new planes. I mean, the A220, the A320 family, the A330neo, and the A350. And we'll keep improving, modernizing those planes, obviously, so they will be more and more environmental friendly. Now, when we look at the long-term future, we absolutely believe in the need for decarbonization, and we're investing big time. We see ourselves as pioneers in the domain of sustainable aviation, and we are putting our money, our efforts, our projects where our mouth is. And that's basically what Airbus is doing today.